So, Rich, as we talk about mandatory reporting, what does a group leader do to help create safety in the group? Because this can feel messy. It can feel like, anything I share, Rich might turn and call the lawyer on me. So how do we create that feeling or that environment of safety and confidentiality, even while being aware of possible mandatory reporting issues?
Yeah, the big thing is literally the start of group, walking through the introduction, going through the memo of understanding, the covenant to contend, just walking through that and explaining why we're mandatory reporters and what that looks like and when we can break confidentiality and walking them through that. I'll always start group by sharing my story. Obviously, my story is a little different than most people, but I'll share my story. And then I will always tell them in that first meeting, if there's something in your story that you're going to share that's along the line of my story, don't share it today. If you want to share it, then contact me outside of group. So that's one way you can keep the group safe.
Because let's unpack that a little bit. Because if a group member discloses some illegal activity that they have done in the past, whether it's abuse or self-harm or anything like that, if it goes to court, then your entire group could get subpoenaed to then be witnesses of what happened, correct?
Correct.
Which can just create legal complications. Yeah. And it creates a lack of safety in the group then at that point too. And
that's why I'll try to encourage them to talk to me outside of group. And almost any time that I've had a group member in that situation, that's always happened outside of group. I've never had anybody in a group that I've led
just drop a bomb.
Drop a bomb because I let them know up front.
Yeah.
And I tell them the benefits, it sounds funny, but the benefits of disclosing this, because they're so worried about getting in trouble, but then true healing can start taking place at that point.
Yeah. It's good.
But just like you said, if it's people drop a bomb in group, then all of a sudden the group becomes a potential, for a subpoena down the road. So.
Yeah.
Well, I just want to underscore what you said, Rich, about the memo of understanding. It's why we encourage that no one should do group until they've signed that, because the memo covers it and says, hey, I understand there are limits to confidentiality. And it even lists out, here are a few things that if I share, my group and my leader are mandatory reporters and they will have to take that and to authorities. And then I do just what you do. I say, hey, if that's part of your story, which it might be, because in our sexual brokenness, sin and fallenness can take us to all kinds of evil behaviors, that doesn't mean that's who we are, but if that's part of our story, that may be part of what we have to deal with. Yeah. And I want to encourage you to do that, but doing that in group is not the right place. And I'll bring back that reminder like before certain lessons, like when we're going to do the one on secrets, doing the one on our 10 worst moments, doing some of those lessons that okay, this could delve into someone's past issues. I'll just say, hey, just a reminder, if you've done anything as an adult towards minors, towards handicapped, towards elderly, the group is not the place to share that part. And, I remind them why, and everyone knows. And so it doesn't come up in group. The question I do get a lot from group members is like, when we're talking about 10 worst moments and some of that, they'll say, well, what if it happened to me as a child? And you can remind them like, well, no, even if it's something you did to another child as a child, you were both minors, and so it's not a mandatory reporting situation as far as I understand. Now, Rich can speak more on that too, because if you start to get into older teenage years towards younger children, there are some sticky issues there. But what I get more commonly is, things that happen between two teenage kids in a dating relationship, or the stories we hear of, we were both kids and it was child exploration kind of stuff. Do I have to report that? It's like, no, those aren't reportable situations. That's when you're talking about two minors. So that's a different scenario.
Yeah. And to your point too, Rich, making sure that in your state what is mandatory report, what you need to report on for sure. I really just like what you said, Rich, that the idea of you're just setting the tone early, and we'll get into like how this can impact the group a little bit later, but I just think that that's important, that this isn't something. It's interesting. If you don't talk about it at the front of group and really go through the memo of understanding and make sure guys are clear on this, guys or gals going through group are not clear on this, then when you get to that point and something comes up, like it's going to be an absolute mess. Like, so this is protecting you and the group. And so that's why prioritizing up front is really important.
And I reiterate the importance of going through the introduction and going through that part. Yeah. We still have group leaders in churches that just go right to pillar 1, lesson 1.
Right.
So they don't even look. So we have group members call and say, what's the MOU? Because they hear about it like on the podcast and blah. They're like, what is this you're talking about? And I'm like, well, did you go through it in your group? They're like, no, they have no idea. It's very important that you do not skip those pieces in introduction because of